As the church bells are ringing to indicate it's 7 o'clock in the morning here in New York, I want to kind of touch base on today the fruits of an 18-month study I conducted on homegrown terrorism here in the United States, and why I believe we have misappropriated funding on how to combat this, but more importantly than the misappropriation, if you will, of how we fund our efforts here at home. And I say that without prejudice. This is not pointing a finger and saying that Congress is bad in this regard or that our president is bad. I just think we are a bit misguided as a result of not really truly diagnosing what the issue is. You know, it's interesting when we go to a doctor. My sister's a doctor, and I think she could probably speak on this better than I can, but before a treatment plan can be established and medicine prescribed, there first has to be a diagnosis. We have to accurately identify the ailment so that the medicine prescribed is effective. And that is the same way with money in relationship to how we fund our efforts, right? If money is appropriated and directed to procure resources and manpower to mitigate something, if we have the diagnosis wrong, all the money in the world will not address the concern in question. So, in relationship to the homegrown terror concern, I have gone over the discoveries and life stories of over 20 federal detainees whose crimes were essentially crimes of either material support for terror or terror in and of itself. And in meeting these men, most of whom were either brought to the United States by their parents while children and minors, or in some cases born here, one surprise kind of hit me. We all kind of walk into analytics, I think, with a degree of bias, and I certainly was thinking that, well, they must be radical. Maybe their families are radical. And I was wrong. The families of these men exhibited absolutely no signs of political radical dynamics. They did not come to the United States for religious war. They came here, like most of our ancestors, in an opportunity either fleeing from tyranny or seeking a better economic life and liberty for their children. But this is where things went sideways. And that has to do with the schools. So young people going into school, if you're from countries like Uzbekistan or Mali or Bangladesh, and you're going into school and you don't know anyone, it could be very scary. I thought high school was scary in and of itself. And I was born in New Jersey. Who could imagine what a young boy or girl from Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan might feel? And unfortunately, as most of our federal funding in relationship to our schools is spent on drug and gang interdiction, these children were in many cases left behind. Their parents lacked the cultural competency to address some of the most important concerns socially, not because that these were stupid people, but if your life was spent in another country, it's difficult to provide counsel and advice to specific concerns involving the community where you now live, which resulted in children not being able to receive counsel, and then children isolating, in the comfort of video games. Now, you're probably saying video games. Well, video games in and of itself are not bad. But video games with chat rooms could become extraordinarily dangerous. And in these chat rooms, 90% of those who ended up committing acts of terror here in the United States were recruited. They were recruited by those who were sent by our adversaries in ISIS and Al-Qaeda to identify those who were ripe for grooming and for radicalization. And before you know it, a young 14-year-old, 4 years later, is now a full-fledged member of an organization whose object politically is our destruction. And yet, this could be averted. My proposal is not to allocate money to police departments for guns and armored troop carriers. I believe that is a fancy cleanup crew operation. What my plan is to attack this from the source so that we don't need the latter. I believe that the issue here is about becoming and belonging, as we all have a desire in our lives to belong to something. And as such, I think that we need to repurpose our funding to address this, and how to do that is to essentially create a rapidly deployable team of educators and psychologists, social workers, and those who will be creating curriculums to be brought into school districts who have crossed a tripwire that will be determined by our Homeland Security and intelligence agencies, indicating that a percentage of the population comes from certain countries. Now, this is not designed to hurt people. It's designed to assimilate and allow people to belong. Young men and women will be given buddies. Parents will also be given buddies so that there's cultural competency. And remember what assimilation is and what it is not. It is not about forgetting where you come from. It's about bringing where you came from and incorporating it into your new home. So food fair days for the countries where these young people come from, so the kids here in America can learn about wonderful places like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and all these wonderful foods, and vice versa. Kids get on the basketball and baseball team, and guess what, folks? When someone's on the theater club, when someone's, on the swim team, when someone's playing on the basketball team, guess what? Young girls and boys don't become terrorists. But when we do not offer our friendship, when we isolate, when there is no connection, that is when the sheep, so to speak, become very, very, very vulnerable to the lions. So I hope that we can rethink how we deal with this by first correctly diagnosing it and then appropriating the funds to mitigate this in a way that's not only edifying to everyone involved, but will keep us safe generationally and uphold our values as a nation that cares for its citizens and cares for those who are our new friends. God bless you.